Hello and welcome to this special episode of the VATE Village. We are previewing some of the sessions running at VATE's 2020 State Conference. And I'm very lucky to have Kate Blandford here from Hoppers Crossing Secondary College. Director of English, is that your full title? Good.
That is correct.
Because I decided interviewing myself about the workshop I'm running was possibly taking it a step too far, even for quarantine. So Kate's here very kindly talking with me about the leadership sessions that we are running on the Saturday, October the 3rd for conference. We'll just let you know at the start of the video, everybody, that if you hear screaming in the background, it is Kate's very well-occupied working from home children. I think it will be a very familiar phenomenon for many people listening to this today. So Kate, I guess I've had a lot of conversations. I've been pestering you via email and text to sort of follow how you've been going throughout this whole period and this year, and pestering a lot of other people I know leading English departments around the state. And two sort of central themes were really distilled for me by the time I had to propose a session for conference. And the first one was that I think it was important to just give English faculty leaders a space to discuss the lessons of this year. So the first session of this stream at conference will be focused on that, on what we think we can take away from this experience once we get a chance to actually step back and breathe. What have been the lessons for you this year in a very sort of bizarre year that's not over either?
That's a great point. Who knows where we'll be by the time the conference rolls around. I guess I don't think fortunate is ever the word we want to use to describe the situation we're in at the moment, but certainly having two iterations of remote learning really gave us a chance to perhaps stop and evaluate lessons learned from Mark 1 and try some different things in Mark 2. So having a space to reflect on that, I think, will be really, really powerful. Imagine if we were to continue into term 4 or a third version of this, surely things can only get better while the rest of the world gets worse. I don't know. So I guess that opportunity for reflection and for slowing down, and I guess thinking about what is working and what isn't, on the one hand, we're busier than ever, but on the other hand, we seem to have more space to reflect.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, and this came up in a Melbourne Uni webinar that the School of Education ran, I can't speak anymore, around this idea that I guess being an English leader or any kind of leader really in a school setting, you get told no quite frequently. And, you're dealing with established structures and ways of being. And that one of the perhaps interesting lessons of this year is that actually things can change radically and completely when they need to. So I think that's a really interesting thing. Next time leaders are going and asking administrations for certain changes, whether it's to curriculum or allotments or anything like that, there's actually this huge body of evidence now that, your faculty, your teaching staff are incredibly flexible and adaptable. Not that
absolutely.
we haven't made mistakes, but
there's been more innovation going on in certainly in my school, and I'm sure in every school, than I would have ever in my wildest dreams thought possible. And it's very interesting to see, I guess, the dynamics between, teachers of 30, 40 years experience and what they bring to this space, what graduate teachers bring to this space. I really feel for our grads. We've got quite a few in our department this year, and welcome to the world of education. If you can survive this, surely you can survive anything. So yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be a real matter of stopping and thinking about what worked and maybe the reasons for why it worked and how we can translate back into a more traditional classroom setting, and which things we can leave behind that are no good and that weren't working for us and won't continue to work for us in the future.
Absolutely. And I think having that discussion as well about what is absolutely essential. I know before I hit record, you and I were discussing issues around workload for students and what students are actually engaging with while they're at home. And just some really interesting questions then about what we consider essential in our curriculum, in the skills that we're teaching young people. So I'm hoping all of this and more will come out of this session at conference. I'd really like to provide a space for people to share some of those lessons and possibly for us to form some networks going forward between different leaders at different schools who have these experiences to share. I think obviously there are some really big questions, questions that have been around for a long time about the way that senior English is structured, high stakes examinations, all of that. But those questions again have only become more urgent this year. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear from people's experiences around the state. The last thing that I'm sure we will have to discuss in that session will be some of the implications for us going forward about delays to the study design being rewritten, etc., and what those implications might be for you as a leader and working with your staff. The second session, and you and I, again, when we worked together, this was sort of the center of our lives in many ways, is going to be focused around leading in the age of data. And again, before we hit record, you had a very interesting observation. I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot asking you to repeat yourself. But...
well, I'll certainly do my best. I guess, you know, just even the title of this workshop of data-led leadership in the absence of our two core, well, our core data set, I guess, in the sense of NAPLAN is something that, you know, AIPs and SSRs and so forth are based around that data. The absence of data, I think, will be interesting. And then we have the variability and I guess the challenges around the VCE data sets and what they're going to look like from this year. So I think it's really exciting time because I think you and I would agree that there's a lot more data out there than just those two data sets. So it's, again, giving us a good opportunity to explore that further, perhaps.
Absolutely. And I think, again, in the evolution of that conversation around data, some of the rich data sources, and it's really interesting to see the light shone back on teacher judgment as a result of this entire situation we find ourselves in. So I think, again, I really want to provide a space at the conference for leaders to discuss what some of those other data sources might be, what the implications may be for their teams. Because I know a lot of professional learning programs, etc., are really driven by, for example, the VCE data set. And as you say, those higher order sort of governing documents in a school. So I think, again, a really exciting time to have the conversation with leaders who are, I guess, often held to account by some very narrow data sets. It's, I think, you know, obviously troubling time, but really exciting possibility to have that conversation now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for indulging me and fleshing out some of these issues. I really would love to see as many leaders as possible. You don't have to have a formal leadership position to come along to these sessions at State Conference. They'll all be online and you can sign up by visiting the VATE website. The online sessions are running live on the Saturday morning and afternoon on October the 3rd. So send me an email if you've got any questions or jump on the website and sign up. Thank you again, Kate.
Thanks, Ernest.